All right, today we're going to talk about a really tough but important story. It's about Otto Warmbier, a young American college student in a trip he took to one of the most closed-off countries in the world, a trip that ended in an absolute international tragedy. So get this, the tour company Otto Warmbier used had this as their slogan: destinations your mother would rather you stayed away from. And despite that edgy warning, they still advertised it as being safe for Americans. And for Otto, a tragic understatement doesn't even begin to cover it. What started out as, a curious student's adventure just completely spiraled into this international crisis with just devastating consequences.
All right, so let's back up a little. Who exactly was Otto Warmbier, and how did he end up on this trip in the first place?
So Otto was, by all accounts, a really bright and driven guy, a student at the University of Virginia, double majoring in commerce and economics. He'd even studied at the London School of Economics. People described him as popular, super studious, and just genuinely curious about the world. You can see he'd already been to places like Israel, Cuba, Ecuador, a real traveler. And it was that passion, that curiosity, that led him to book this quick tour of North Korea. He was actually on his way to a study abroad program in Hong Kong and just decided to tack on this little adventure.
And his trip just turned on a dime. One minute he's in Pyongyang with his tour group celebrating New Year's Eve, and then everything changes. The next day, he allegedly tries to take a propaganda poster from a hotel. And then on January 2nd, when he's literally at the airport, ready to leave, two guards just tap him on the shoulder and lead him away. Just like that. And that was it. That was the last time anyone from his tour group would ever see him again.
So now we go from this sudden, quiet arrest to a full-blown international crisis.
Then, a few weeks later, this footage comes out. It's a televised press conference, and a clearly distressed, tearful Otto Warmbier's there, confessing. He says, "I have made the worst mistake of my life." He admits to trying to steal a propaganda poster, one that said, "Let's arm ourselves strongly with Kim Jong-il's patriotism." But then his story gets, well, weird. He claims he did it for a church and some secret society back in the US, and pretty much everyone watching knew this sounded completely forced, almost certainly scripted by his North Korean captors.
And after that confession? Well, the North Korean version of justice was incredibly swift. The entire trial, which supposedly included his confession, CCTV footage, witness testimony, the whole shebang, was over in just 1 hour. 60 minutes. That's it.
And the sentence was just staggering. 15 years. 15 years of hard labor for the crime of subversion. You can imagine the outcry. Human Rights Watch immediately called it a kangaroo court and said the sentence was outrageous and shocking for trying to take a poster.
And then, nothing. After the sentence, this long, agonizing silence begins. For 17 months, Otto Warmbier essentially vanished. His condition, his whereabouts, a complete mystery to the rest of the world.
Now, here's the truly chilling part of this whole thing. We now know that very shortly after his trial, right at the beginning of his sentence back in March 2016, Otto suffered some kind of severe neurological injury and fell into a coma. But this was kept completely secret. For more than a year, while his family was desperately fighting for his release, they had absolutely no idea that he was already unconscious.
Okay, so then, in June of 2017, there's a breakthrough. Diplomatic efforts finally work, and his release is secured. But the person who came home was not the same person who left.
So, what happened to him? Well, that's where the mystery really deepens, because we have two completely different stories. North Korea's official account was that he got botulism from food, took a sleeping pill, and then fell into a coma. But when US doctors examined him, they said, nope, no evidence of botulism at all. What they did find was extensive loss of brain tissue, the kind of injury caused when the brain is starved of oxygen, maybe from something like a cardiac arrest. They also noted there were no signs of skull fractures.
So, tragically, his return wasn't really a rescue. It was more of a final, heartbreaking homecoming. He never regained consciousness. The doctors confirmed he was in a state of unresponsive wakefulness. Basically, no hope of recovery. And just 6 days after he landed back in the United States, his parents made the impossible decision to remove his feeding tube. He passed away at just 22 years old.
As you can imagine, the death of an American citizen under these circumstances sent shockwaves around the world and had immediate, serious consequences.
Otto's death directly triggered some major policy changes. First, the US banned all tourist travel to North Korea for its citizens, a ban that's still in place today. Second, the State Department put North Korea back on the list of state sponsors of terrorism, and they specifically pointed to Otto's case as a major reason why.
And the Warmbier family didn't stop there. They filed a lawsuit against North Korea for torture and murder. Of course, the North Korean regime didn't even show up to contest it. So a U.S. federal court issued what's called a default judgment. They found North Korea liable for his torture, for taking him hostage, and for his death, and ordered them to pay the family over $500 million.
And that brings us to the end, but not really to a conclusion. We're left with this really haunting question, aren't we? Was this a tragic, stupid mistake by a young tourist that just spiraled way out of control? Or was it something much darker, a brutal murder? On the one hand, a coroner didn't find obvious signs of, physical torture on his body. But on the other hand, you have that severe, unexplained brain injury and the 17 months of total secrecy, which just leaves this massive cloud of suspicion. Ultimately, Otto Warmbier's story is a chilling, tragic reminder of the very real human cost of these political conflicts and the incredible risks of venturing into the world's most isolated corners.